Hello, my Grotzengits, and welcome back to Happy Corrupted Wargaming. I am excited to do a little Custodes work. Now, here's the deal, everyone. We know some fundamental truths about Custodes right now, and they are not the top of the meta, but there are multiple ways to be playing them, and if you've been stuck in one way, I want to give you a few alternate paths that could maybe spice up your games just a little bit. Now, let's just talk a little tiny weeny bit about what Custodes are. Then I'm going to get into 3 lists, and I might have a bonus list to throw in there for you that you can maybe try out and experiment for yourself. So, Custodes, where are we in the meta? Now, here's the reality, is that Custodes got effectively no buffs in the balanced data slate, or not the balanced data slate, but the MFM, which was the big points updates that came about 2 weeks ago. People said, oh, but the Virtus Praetors, the bikes came down in cost, and so did Trajan, and then so did the Dreadnoughts. Well, the reality is that Virtus Praetors are so dang bad that they could be pointed. They would have to be at such a ludicrous point cost to ever be worth considering taking. Like, they would have to be guard priced, maybe even cheaper than guard to actually really strongly consider taking them. They are awful. Then Trajan going down to 140 doesn't make Trajan good. It doesn't even make Trajan playable. All the Custodes characters are overcosted as is, so who cares? And then the Dreadnoughts, it doesn't matter how cheap they are, bro. They move 6 inches. So there is a little thing that we can do. Maybe we could play the Dreadnoughts, but they would have to go up to that big 8-inch movement. And I'd be willing to bet that GW has that on their radar, and they're taking a look at that in the December balanced data slate. So where are we in the meta? In all reality, we are actually better off than we were previous, because T-Sons definitely got knocked down quite a bit. Sisters are still a problem, but they got knocked down quite a bit. Some of the armies that we play a little bit better into, say like Orcs, they might be a little more prevalent, which is good for us, although I don't necessarily think we have auto wins into Orcs by any means, but Custodes absolutely have a little bit of play now, which they previously did not. So, what are the big threats that we're going to have to deal with? Well, we're going to discuss that in the next slide. We're going to talk about some of the armies that we like. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to build these dang army lists, and I'm going to give you some ideas about how to run your Golden Boys and actually have a good time with them and be quite competitive with them, or as competitive as we can as of right now. So what are the big problems that we are trying to solve as Custodes players? One of the big problems that we're trying to solve is a freaking gun line. What do we do when our opponents just have tanks, and a 30-point infantry or a 40-point infantry unit sitting on an objective saying, come at me, bruh? Well, that's a problem. What are we going to do when we're playing against melee armies that just have crazy melee pressure and they have very high AP? Will ACDC anyone? Well, that's an issue. And then what are we going to do when we have those annoying 50-point units that are far away in the corner of the map, and they're just going to sit there and score 20 points for our opponents? They cost them 0 points, and we can't even interact with them, because if we do, we're going to have to dedicate a 400-point unit to kill a 50-point unit, which then we will lose a 400-point unit on the slapback. Well, it's a bit of a problem as well, so we've got to figure out what we're going to do about that. So what are the worst offenders as far as, like, when Custodes are playing? Who are the armies we really don't want to see? And I do need a few asterisks here, so I'm going to put a little asterisk here. All right, first off, we hate Tau. Tau are nightmares. Montcalm, they get to move up. They are going to ignore cover on literally everything, so our cover doesn't matter because they're always going to be having marker lights keywords, so that the AP1 will be actually AP1. They've got a crazy amount of flat damage 3. If they're playing Callion, they're going to have crazy amounts of double exploding shots. Tau, Merc, Custodes. So that's a big problem. So we got to think about how do we play against Tau. Guard are a big problem. Although, to be fair, Guard are a huge problem for everyone in the game right now, because I think Guard are going to be by far the best army in the game, especially with the addition of those freaking Aquilans. Those Aquilans are busted, and they are a bit of a problem. Now, here's the reality. We can't do anything about the Aquilans, but there might be some things that we could do to fend off the gun lines. So if you don't have a bunch of Aquilans in your meta, then you might have actually some reasonably good, decent games in the Guard. GSC is a big issue simply because they have so many freaking units. And every time we put a unit, they might not kill one of ours, but they're definitely going to take one of our units down to half strength, and then they have a 50-50 shot of getting the unit that we killed back. So definitely GSC is an issue, but they're more of an issue, not necessarily because of the damage they're putting out, but simply because of the sheer amount of units that they can bring. Tyranids are a big issue, and Tyranids are a really big issue for one, well, maybe 2 reasons. I'm going to go ahead and name them for you right here. It is going to be the Excrin and the Maliceptor. That stupid flat 3 damage that they're just going to be blasting from the other side of the table just is a bit of an issue. Then lastly, we have a bit of a problem with Orcs. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk here because Orcs are not busted in Custodes. Actually, I would rate Orcs and Custodes are approximately at the same level in the game right now. Now, Custodes love Orcs because they have low AP, and most of their strength is going to be at the 4 to 5 for the strength level, and even their big power claw attacks from their knobs are going to be at strength 10 at best, which is meaning that they're never winning Custodians on better than 3s. Custodians have really good armor saves, so Custodians actually have a good game plan into Orcs. Now, one thing to be aware of, since this latest points update, Orcs are going to be very cheap, which means they're going to start transitioning slightly into the GSC problem, where they just have so many dang units that could be a little bit of an issue for us. The nice thing about Orcs is that we can also kind of more or less stand out in the open against them, because their shooting is not a threat. And then let me give one special mention for Death Guard. If you guys haven't seen some of the new Death Guard stuff, like some of the new competitive lists, maybe I'll do a video on that maybe this weekend, actually. Custodes can't beat Death Guard. I think Death Guard just auto win against Custodes, which is frustrating. But let's get some army lists that can help kind of mitigate some of these problems. So let's get into it. Number one is going to be one that you're all familiar with, but then I'm going to give you some new stuff. So number one is the standard. Now, this is what we've seen is competitively viable, well, competitively-ish viable. You're going to take 2 Blade Champs and Valerian, potentially 3 Blade Champs, just depending on your flavor. You're then going to have 3 units of Custodian Wardens, because the Wardens get to charge out, they kill a thing, they try to tag a few things, they activate the Feel No Pain in your opponent's shooting phase to make sure that your opponent just doesn't get good pressure on the swing back. Then you're going to run 2 units of Venatari, because the Venatari are freaking awesome, and they are amazing for getting that free rapid ingress, which is going to allow them to hunt those little annoying those super annoying units that your infantry just can't really commit to. Then you have 2 units of Witch Seekers. The Witch Seekers are there to score you secondaries. So one of the things I always do with one of my units of Witch Seekers is I deploy them more or less on the line, so that if I go first, I'll scout them 6 inches forward, so I can always get to area denial turn 1, so I never have to throw that card away. And I'll do the same on the flank with my Calidus, and I'll do the same on my flank with the other unit of Witch Seekers, so I can get the containments as well, and I never have to throw those cards away if I happen to draw them turn 1. And then if I go second, the Witch Seekers will just scout move away into safety where my opponent cannot see them. So I'm never worried about giving away those easy to score secondaries turn 1 because of the way I deploy. Witch Seekers are awesome for that. If you're playing this in Talons, which a lot of people will play this in Talons, one of the cool things about it is suddenly now the Witch Seekers are giving that 5-up Feel No Pain to all of your Custodes. And if you are playing Talons, I would recommend maybe try to fit in an extra 1 or 2 units of Sisters in here just to be able to spread the love a little bit. But I would probably be running this in Shieldhouse, just to make all of my Wardens slap way, way harder and my Venatari slap super, super hard. You could also then put the 2 Calades Grav Tanks down. This is, once again, the standard, the 2 Calades Grav Tanks. Now, I am notorious for not liking Calades Gravity Tanks, because I think they are just not reliable enough for the points that they cost. Because when you do the math on it, if your opponent has a Rhino, and that Rhino uses Armor of Contempt, you only have a 47% chance of killing a Rhino with a Calades Gravity Tank, which means your 215-point unit only has a less than 50% chance of killing that 80-point model. That is a big issue for an anti-tank gun. I think Calades Gravity Tanks are easily fixed. I think it's very simple. All you do is you put them up to that AP4, and then I'd be actually quite happy with them. But, as is, this is the best we have, so double Calades Gravity Tanks is really nice. Now, what problems do this solve? These Calades Gravity Tanks actually do help quite a bit with some of the gunline play. So if you put a Leman Russ on the line, 2 Calades is into that Leman Russ, you can generally expect that Leman Russ to go poof, which is actually very, very nice for the Custodes. It gives us a moment where we can pop this Leman Russ, potentially pop this Dorn, and it gives us the ability to systematically decrease the amount of firepower that our guard opponent has on the table, which would then allow us to, maybe in a round 3 or 4, get all of our infantry on the line and able to, or maybe onto the objectives, and to start denying primary and scoring primary ourselves without having to be worried about him just instantly picking up any one of our units. So this Calades Gravity Tanks 100% open up a guard matchup. They also are really nice into things like, your Sisters. So if you have your emulators, sometimes you might actually just be able to pop 1 immolator with 1 Calades Gravity Tank. Although most of the times I would suggest that you probably need 2, which is frustrating because they have those stupid miracle dice. But, it is what it is. So they absolutely help with that, but they really help into that NIDS matchup, because now suddenly the second you take the 2 Calades Gravity Tanks, your freaking X-Crins are no longer able to just stand in a firing lane and hammer your infantry. Your opponent has to be very cautious with those X-Crins, because your Calades Gravity Tanks typically will pop the X-Crins, which is a very, 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 very nice thing. Okay, so this is what this army does. The Calades Gravity Tanks will just go ahead and pop those big long-range threats, or at least they'll threaten those long-range threats, so that those long-range threats can't just stand out in the open and blast your infantry. Meanwhile, the Blade Champs will advance in charge and tag a bunch of stuff and activate the Feel No Pains in your opponent's turn to hopefully not die. So this is the standard list. It's a strong list. I think it's probably the second strongest list that Custodes currently can field. Then we have Army number 2. Now, this is one that I've been working with a couple of my clients, and we've been getting some pretty dang good results with it. This is actually relatively similar to the first list, but it's got a few unique takes. So this can be, once again, be run in either Talons, or it can be run in Shield Host. It's really up to you what you want to do. Now, if you're running in, I personally recommend running this one in Talons, however. So you're going to take Valerian, and Valerian's going to be leading the big unit of Wardens. This unit is literally going to advance up to your natural expansion, and it is going to stand there. And it might not do anything for the rest of the game, but what it will do is guarantee that you score your natural expansion, and it's never going away, because they're just going to hang out there and do their thing. They're more or less unchargeable because between Valerian's armor of contempt that he gives his unit in melee, being able to flip a dice, the 4 Fiona Pain, basically no unit in the game can actually charge that squad and expect to do anything good. Then you're going to have a 5-man squad of Alaris Custodians. If you're running this in Talons, which I think I recommend this list to be run in Talons, that squad is actually a nightmare in shooting because suddenly they go up to Strength 5 and AP 2 on all of their weaponry, which really, honestly, they're basically guaranteed to pop a Rhino with that. When you do the math on it, which is really, really nice, which lets your Callidas gravity tanks kind of spread out where they're shooting quite a bit, and you can kind of overload your opponent with threats. Not to mention the Alaris Custodians get to teleport once per turn, forcing your opponent to constantly be screening everywhere, which can absolutely decrease some of the pressure that's coming at you. Then we have 2 squads of Custodian Guard. I like these guys. I start one of them in Deep Strike, and I'm going to Rapid Ingress them, and then I'm going to double Rapid Ingress the 2 Venatari squads in the same turn, so I get 3 Rapid Ingresses in one turn, which can be a crazy amount of pressure for my opponent to have to deal with. If you have never pulled off the triple or even the quadruple Rapid Ingress as Custodes, I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic feeling. So we just spoke about the Venatari. We know what the Prosecutors and Witch Seekers are doing. What these girls are doing, they're literally just providing the auras. That is more or less all they're doing. And the Witch Seekers are, of course, in position turn 1 to be able to scout up to get us the sweet Area of Denial if we so draw that turn 1. Then lastly, we have the Callidas Assassin, who's going to show up in every single list because if you're Imperial Army and you're not taking the Callidas, I do not know what is wrong with you. The Callidas is just, it's bonkers. It's just too good. So you're going to take her. She's going to score more or less all of your secondaries. And this list actually works really, really dang well. Now, as the first army list, the standard here, this I do like more in Shield Host. And then army number 2, which is what I call the defensive push. Simply because you're much more defensive with this army, and then you're going to push. This I like more in Talons simply for some of the strats. Then lastly, let's look, well, not quite lastly, we're going to look at army number 3, which I lovingly have titled the LFG. I think you know what that stands for. So this is a awesome list that I have. I've got a few clients that have had a lot of success with, and I've been playing it myself, and it is very fun. It is more challenging to play than the other 2 lists, but I do also, I'm pretty much sold on the fact that it also has a higher potential. This has a higher potential of like how good it can be. So basically what we're doing is we're running 1 Blade Champ and we're running 1 Shield Captain in Alaris Terminator armor. The Alaris Terminator Captain is going to have the Panopta specs, which means that the Terminators will now ignore cover, which is basically the same thing as giving them AP2 because it's only AP1. So the ignore cover for 5 points is kind of bonkers good. And you're always going to take that, especially when you're taking the Alaris Brick, because the Alaris Brick in this detachment will do exactly what it did in the Talons detachment, only you're getting to run Shield Host here. So you get the shooting from the Alaris Brick, which is still going to pop the transport, or it's still going to, honestly, you can, X-Crins are pretty hard to get with this, just because you're only going, you're not going to the Strength 5 with it. Well, actually, Strength 5 wouldn't matter anyway, because you're winning on 6s, which does make it hard to get, like, say, the X-Crins with this one, but you're still going to be picking up Rhinos with this squad in shooting. And you can absolutely be plinking damage off of, say, like the Norn or things like that, simply because, hey, man, when you get to reroll wound rolls against monsters and vehicles, you get to reroll wound rolls against monsters and vehicles, and that freaking matters. Then we're going to have 4 units of Custodian Guard. One of these units of Custodian Guard I will start in Deep Strike. One of them will be sticking my home field turn 1, and then the other 2 will be advancing up. The Blade Champion will be leading one of them. Then I've got 3 squads of Venatari Custodians. So this is the army where you're going to do the quadruple Rapid Ingress. This is the go turn to end all go turns. This is when you're going to Rapid Ingress one of your Custodian Guard squad and then 3 different Venatari squads. And your opponent is not going to be positioned to be able to handle all of those units. Followed by 2 mandatory Witch Seekers for all of our actions and our secondaries. And then we have the Callidas Assassin because the Callidas Assassin is once again bonkers good. This detachment is always run Shield Host. always, always, always shield host, and it is freaking strong in shield host. All these units kill. So a 3-man Ventarian shield host picks up a baby knight, which is a really, really big breakpoint because they don't do it in talons when they only get sustained or lethals on 6s. Here, when we get sustained on 5s, yeah, it matters a lot. All right, so those were the 3 armies that were for real, like actually very good, reasonable options, and I want you to try them all out. I have a bonus list for you that does not work as of today. Like, seriously, don't do this one. But with a very small change, I actually see that there is a lot of potential in it. So let's get Army 4, which I have lovingly titled, Don't Do This. We are, oh, let me make this type just a little bit bigger because that is a little bit small. All right, here we go. So we're going to take Valerian, and he's going to run with 4 Wardens. He's going to do the exact same thing as we did in the last list. He's going to make a beeline straight for your natural expansion, and he is going to stand there. Then we've got 4 Prosecutors because we need an Action Monkey. We've got 2 units of Venatori in reserve because they're going to be doing rapid ingress things. We've got 2 units of Witch Seekers because, we always want Witch Seekers. And then we're running Dreadnought spam. We're going to go with 3 Contemptor Achilles, 3 Contemptor Galatus, and 1 Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. Now, here's the reason that this list doesn't work. These guys only move 6 inches. If these Dreadnoughts started moving 8 inches and you took really no points off of them, I got to be real with you, these are good Dreadnoughts. They are actually quite dang strong. Getting that Gladys, that sweet, sweet 4 invulnerable is a really big deal. The Contemptor just coming back to life. Guys, these Dreadnoughts actually have good profiles for the points cost, and if you ran a Dreadnought party with this, it would be spicy if they had movement 8. Movement 6 makes it basically undoable, sadly, because it makes it way too easy for your opponent just to measure the lines of like how far you have to move. So it really just won't work, which is super, super sad and super, super unfortunate, but it is what it is. So with that, guys, this is the army number 4. Don't do this, but I do believe this is something that can be easily fixed by GW, and they have said that they are looking for some more radical rule shifts in December, and not just points, which is really what Custodians need. We do not need points, guys. We need rules, and that is the big deal. If I had my way, what I would do is I'd say, hey, you know what? This book, this entire codex, throw it away, give us the index back, write a new codex. I don't think that is actually going to happen, but there's lots of good things that GW can just do just to give Custodes a little more flavor. I love my Custodes. I miss being able to play them. Now, I do believe just because of all the other shifts in the meta right now, Custodes are very doable. I just don't expect to see tournaments won by them, but I do think that you can take them to a tournament, get to that 2-3, get to that 3-2 level, and have a good time. Give these things a try and let me know how it goes. Until next time, crump on, baby. Bye-bye.